Howard Carter and his team had uncovered King Tutankhamun's tomb. Inside they found fabulous artifacts, many covered in gold, but according to legend, they'd also stirred up a 3,000-year-old curse. More than 80 years later, one researcher decided to re-examine the legend of the curse from a scientific perspective.
There are a number of different ways you can approach epidemiological studies. And what these studies are attempting to do is usually see what there's an association between an exposure to something and the development of a disease.
If Mark Nelson could work out who was most likely to have been exposed to a curse, he could then find out how long they lived and why they died. If the curse does exist, he should be able to see its effect on their lives.
And of course, in these circumstances, we're looking at events that took place 80 years ago. What you had to do was go to a library.
Old newspapers tell the story. Expedition sponsor Lord Carnarvon was the curse's first victim. He died just 7 weeks after the formal opening of the burial chamber. The discovery was still headline news, and the team was the toast of the archaeological world. Lord Carnarvon left the Valley of the Kings for a couple of days' rest. He would never return. The illness came quickly, an infection spreading throughout his body. When his condition deteriorated, he was rushed to Cairo. Doctors were called in. His daughter Evelyn remained by his side, but on the 5th of April 1923, Carnarvon died of pneumonia, and the legend of the curse was born.
It certainly was big news at the time because the description that this was due to a curse and that he had defiled the tomb and he had suffered the retribution.
The media was already all over this tomb because of the gold and the mystery of the young pharaoh, the boy king. So as soon as Carnarvon died, the media shifted into high gear and saw this as a direct result of a curse on this tomb. And this was the punishment of the pharaohs on Lord Carnarvon. I mean, it makes a romantic sort of tale that supposedly on the night that Carnarvon died, the lights all went out in Cairo, and his dog started crying and fell over dead. And there were all these mysterious things that happened in connection with the death of Carnarvon. And this was just the beginning of this, horrible curse against anyone who worked in the tomb.
Soon reports came in of a number of other deaths, which appeared to have only one thing in common. 6 months after Carnarvon died, his half-brother Aubrey succumbed to infection following minor surgery. Arthur Mace, Carter's close assistant, had to stop working because of failing health. He died of pleurisy before the tomb was cleared. In 1926, French Egyptologist Georges Benedi fell while visiting the tomb and died soon afterwards. An Egyptian prince was shot after seeing the discovery. Egyptologist James Henry Breasted died of a bacterial infection. American railroad tycoon George J. Gould caught a cold in the tomb and died of pneumonia. Howard Carter's personal secretary, Richard Bethel, died of a heart attack. A short while later, Bethel's father wrote a note stating, "I really cannot stand any more horrors." Then committed suicide by jumping out of a window. Newspapers highlighted the link to the tomb, no matter how tenuous. By 1934, according to some papers, more than 20 people had fallen victim to the curse. How many more deaths would the curse be responsible for? Mark Nelson's next step was to focus on the tomb. He started with the artifacts found inside. Could they hold evidence of a curse? Despite the wealth in the tomb, some historians were disappointed by the find, citing the lack of any written documents.
There are no papyri in that tomb, and very few things that are purely hard documents of history. There's a lot of material that you can draw inferences from, but it was like the most beautiful thing in the world that in some ways disappointed.
They were also puzzled by the shape and size of the tomb. Just one corridor and 4 rooms, less than 1,200 square feet in total. By contrast, the tomb of Ramesses II is 8 times larger.
When you compare the tomb of Tutankhamun to that of other pharaohs, other roughly contemporary pharaohs, his tomb is minuscule. And so it looks very clearly as if it is a non-royal tomb that was used for a royal burial.
Hoping for answers, Carter and his team carefully photographed, collected, and catalogued the tomb's treasures. Outside, crowds gathered to watch, but a legend spoke of another find, hidden away, a tablet containing a written curse, promising death to those who disturb the tomb.
If such a tablet had existed, it would have been physical evidence of a curse being placed on the tomb, and it would have given it more credence.
A cursed tablet is owned by the University of Chicago's Oriental Institute, where Egyptologist Emily Teeter is based.
But this is part of a wall from a tomb built about 2400 BC, 1,000 years before Tut. And this has an actual curse. There's no question what this text is. If coming from the mouth of the man who owned the tomb, his name is Biu, and he says that anybody who comes into his tomb and desecrates the tomb will be seized by the neck like a bird in the necropolis. So in other words, his neck will be wrung, he'll be killed.
Found in relatively few tombs, Egyptian curses threaten everything from bodily harm to punishment from the gods.
The reason they did these tomb curses was there was an unfortunate tendency and practice in ancient Egypt for people to go into tombs and take the grave goods, because there would be things that they could be sold, they would want. And so when people built tombs, they knew that their tombs were in danger, so they tried to protect them, but considering virtually all the tombs in ancient Egypt were robbed, they were not very effective.
Archaeologists think Tutankhamun's tomb was robbed twice, probably soon after his burial.
The robbers were looking for small portable objects that were very precious. So they were going after gold, perfume, and we think probably also textiles. And these could be easily sold on the open market.
Inside the tomb, Howard Carter found several gold rings bundled in a rag. He thought they were dropped by thieves when they were interrupted by guards, who then later filled in the passageway to the tomb. But could a cursed tablet have played a role? Howard Carter always denied rumors of a written curse.
My impression of Carter, that he was an honest, meticulous man. If he had found anything with writing on it, it would have been a major find, whether it had been a curse or any other topic.
The tombs that have curse inscriptions on them, these texts are usually quite prominent. The tomb of Tutankhamun has very little decoration in it. The burial chamber is painted, it's not even carved. There's really no place that a curse inscription could occur reasonably in that chamber.
It appears then that no evidence of a written curse ever existed. But the absence of a tablet isn't scientific proof, so Nelson continued his investigation and learned that Tutankhamun had died under suspicious circumstances. How did the young king die? And could he have been the first victim of the curse? Death, they say, came quickly to those who disturbed Tutankhamun's tomb. But if the curse exists, it seems to have behaved like a contagious disease. People entered the tomb and were exposed to the curse. They caught it, just like catching a cold, and then died. So Mark Nelson should be able to study the curse like any other contagious disease. Sensational newspaper reports claimed over 20 victims, but his job is to separate fact from fiction. Nelson needed to learn who was most likely to have been exposed to the curse, and then see if it had any effect on their lives.